So there are two key reasons why I was asked to do the review. First of all, if you look at the role of innovation in economies, it drives a huge amount of growth, up to 50%, many people estimate. And so it's clearly a critical issue for any economy. And secondly, the states has made productivity growth and growth in general a critical strategic priority. So when you put the two of those together, you have to ask yourself, well, how is Jersey doing on innovation and what could be done to enhance it? So the methodology we've used for the review is very much one of benchmarking, looking at the key drivers of innovation and indicators of good innovative activity and innovation ecosystems, and comparing Jersey to other jurisdictions on those kinds of indicators. But what I would also say is we've used both quantitative and qualitative data from interviews, because innovation is ultimately really very difficult to measure. So we've tried to bring the best of both quantitative and qualitative analysis to bear. Well, Jersey has kind of implicit innovation policies in the sense that it has the Innovation Fund, clearly, but it's relatively small, relatively new, very relatively poorly recognised in terms of the awareness. And it has the various government agencies such as Digital Jersey and Jersey Business, which in many ways actually support innovation activity, but it's maybe not labelled as an innovation agency or as a core function of those particular agencies. So my view is that what is really important in the very first instance is that the existing innovation activity, if we call it that, gets properly joined up, and those agencies all have in their remit that they're there to help innovation, and they also understand the kind of business landscape so that for businesses there's not too much confusion about who does what. So I am certain that the agencies currently do a good job, but sometimes from the point of view of the business, it can come across a bit fragmented. And indeed, they may not even know that the agencies exist and the support is there. So there's a whole package of policies around just supercharging the agencies and making them more joined up. That is indeed the puzzle. There is actually a lot of good stuff going on Jersey in terms of both what the government is doing, but also what firms are doing, investing in R&D, doing innovation in products and processes, and trying to attract the best talent. The best answer that I can give to that kind of dilemma of why is this not turning into GDP are two things. First of all, of course, there are many, many other factors that have an impact on GDP, such as the global financial crisis we've had and the broader sort of demand conditions for businesses. But secondly, maybe, and I think this would be a conclusion we would draw from our analysis, there are quite a lot of barriers in Jersey for really innovative businesses to set up and to grow successfully. And some of those barriers are inherent and cannot be dealt with. You can't really do anything about them. For example, the fact that it's an island and it's inevitably going to be a little bit more expensive, for example, to ship goods back and forth. But then there are other barriers such as regulation, which the government definitely can do something about and should do something about. There are a lot of recommendations, and that's partly a reflection of the sort of relatively bottom-up nature of the analysis. On one hand, I would say they all come as a package. Innovation systems are systems, and so if you only fix one part of them, the overall performance is actually not going to improve. So you sort of need to take them as a package. On the other hand, I think the three that I would pull out as really critical themes are reducing any regulation and red tape, including around migration, not just in reality, but also in perception. So it's very important that the message goes out that Jersey is open for business and it's really welcoming of new ideas, new people, new businesses onto the island. The second one is around making sure that the existing innovation agencies and the Innovation Fund all work in a joined up way, that they all have innovation in their remit, that they all clearly understand what the other agencies are doing, that they're joined up and that they think of the businesses, the customers they serve, as it were, from end to end, rather than on a kind of transactional basis. The third area is around international collaboration, where I think places like Digital Jersey are already doing a great job in linking up the business community here and the innovators here to the broader landscape of both financiers and entrepreneurs and mentors, but also science, technology, and research in other jurisdictions. And because Jersey is small, it's probably not ever going to be able to produce its own science and knowledge quite to the same degree as other countries, but it can exploit the fact that it's next door to UK, which is one of the best places in the world for some of this thing. So there's an international dimension, international collaboration that I think Jersey can improve on. So obviously it's been quite a big undertaking to do this report, and there's a lot of material in it. If I had to summarize it at a very high level, and it is going to be a little bit generic, then I'd say there are a lot of strengths that Jersey has that should stand in very good stead when it starts to build up its innovation activity. And I can go into more detail on those if necessary, but those are all outlined in the report. What we've already discussed is the fact that these strengths are not necessarily translating into GDP growth and productivity growth. So the bottom line is that one needs to take really concrete action on the government front in order to remove the barriers that are there, stopping this positive set of strengths turning into positive GDP growth, and removing the barriers. And the recommendations are intended to be quite granular in that sense, to really be quite action-oriented, so that we can start seeing some real outcomes from the state's innovation policy. I would hope that there are things within the report that are relative quick wins, where we might see impact straight away or relatively soon. So, for example, things that I've mentioned, which are around just communicating better what's already there, should be something that's easy to do relatively quickly. And even if we got just one or two businesses more aware of the fact that Digital Jersey is there, that Jersey Business is there, that Locate Jersey is there to help them, I think that could have immediate impact in terms of new startups and in terms of new employment. The more systemic things will, of course, take much longer, first of all, to resolve and put in place, around changing things like regulations, if that's necessary, setting up collaborations internationally. They will probably bear fruit within years rather than months. And we know from elsewhere that innovation generally takes a long time to permeate through. That isn't a reason for not doing it, because obviously we do need Jersey to start doing these things now, so that in the years to come there's a good basis for continued prosperity. I'm most familiar with Innovate UK because I'm on the governing board, and so taking that just as an example, I think there are many opportunities to collaborate there. Jersey is probably too small to set up all its own innovation programs, but there are many things that Innovate UK is doing that maybe Jersey and Jersey agencies could tap into and could ask to be part of. These are things like the catapults or the knowledge transfer networks and the knowledge transfer partnerships. And so I see no reason why Jersey shouldn't explore just a more formal collaboration with Innovate UK. No doubt there are similar types of agencies and programs in other countries, but UK is perhaps a natural place to start just because of the geographical location and the sort of cultural affinity. I think you're absolutely right that Jersey needs to maintain the positives of its current culture, which after all attracts a lot of capital onto the island and maintains the competitiveness of the financial services industry. I think it's quite easy, in theory anyway, for a more innovative, entrepreneurial, fail-fast culture to develop alongside that. I think the key to that is getting the right talent and the right people on the island, whether they're homegrown in the sense of being Jersey-born people who've gone to Jersey institutions for education and are just have that innovative edge, or whether they're people from elsewhere. I think fundamentally, once you've got the people in the mix and you've removed the barriers to entrepreneurship, then you can start seeing the benefits of innovation, and therefore I think some of the risk averseness may recede. The really kind of practical point I would make is that people might be risk averse in the abstract, but when you show them the specific products or services and innovative businesses developing, you can start talking them through why that's not such a risky thing to do after all, and why there might be lots of benefits from it. So you sort of need to do it case by case. I don't think you can change culture overnight. It's a very important question, because none of this will result in good outcomes unless the recommendations are implemented. And we know from other countries that governments sometimes struggle with implementation. There are a couple of things that are really very common sense. You need to make sure the right resources are in place to implement. Just wishing the recommendations to come through isn't going to work. The second one is using the business community and the stakeholder community to help you graft an action plan that's really quite realistic and very targeted and very concrete, and using that same community to check that you're doing what you said you'd do, using them as a bit of a challenge. I think having measurable milestones and targets and just tracking that is a practical way of checking that you're actually making progress every day, all the time, towards your ultimate goals. And in general, occasionally, maybe not the whole time, but kind of taking the temperature and checking in with, okay, a year ago we found this about Jersey innovation performance. Have we actually moved the needle? Have we improved? So having that occasional, more analytical look will also be helpful.